Welcome to the Power Table. If you are leading your business with a big vision and you're ready for your visibility to match your ambition, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Taylor Smith, founder of the Power Table, serial entrepreneur, and international keynote speaker. I've generated millions in my business through speaking, personal branding, and community building, and I'm here to teach you how to do the same as a founder-led brand. Each week, we dive into the business strategies, identity, and leadership work required to become the woman people recognize, trust, and choose again and again. Because your next level isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become in the process. This is your seat at the table. Power Table! My best friend texted me and she said, this is the kind of thing that we see people post on Instagram, but we've never known anyone who's actually done it. And she was referring to the fact that I had a 6-figure launch day. I made over 6 figures in sales in one day. Welcome back to the Power Table podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Smith, and I'm very excited about this podcast episode because I'm going to share my real life launch breakdown, numbers, strategy, everything you want to know, the good, the bad, what worked, what didn't. And I've never done that. I've never pulled back the curtain and included a full numbers breakdown of a launch. And I am very excited. I'm sure you guys are very curious. So let's go ahead and set the stage of what happened. How did I have a 6-figure day in business? And what you can take away from it for your next launch this fall. If you're listening to this in real time when this comes out, you're probably headed into a launch season this fall. So let's get started. Now, we often see the idea of a 6-figure launch as something that we think is luck, or they must have a really big audience, or some kind of viral moment. Like, also, if you're listening to this, by the time this episode comes out, we will have been a few weeks after the Yapping launch, where there's a content creator named Jessie Jean. She had a $1.2 million launch selling a 6-week live Yap challenge, which was like a social media post your talking head video content challenge. She built an audience in about 5 months doing this one specific thing. And she went on to have a very, very successful 7-figure launch, which is really cool for her. What a cool thing to be able to say that you did. But I think that it's important to understand that these type of launches, like the 6-figure day that I had, or like these big 7-figure launches, is that they're designed. Every single piece of it is highly intentional and structural. We are reverse engineering like you have never seen. Put on your hard hats because that's this kind of episode. I hope you're ready. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see here that I have my laptop out. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys exact numbers and that I don't miss anything from all the notes that I've put together on this episode. Okay, first, let's talk about the goal and the reverse engineering. So my goal was a $100,000 launch. The actual number for the single day launch was $114,624 in sales. More on that in a minute. In a single day. And then if you look across the whole campaign, which expanded beyond that one day, the total number was $139,000. The most important thing I can tell you is that I did not just set a goal and hope it would work. A good launch is not based on hope. It is based on reverse engineering the plan. And this is where most launches do fail because most people do launch on hope and good vibes. They post the offer, create the sales page, post a few times. Maybe they're even like really hitting hard on their social media when it comes to their launch. They are crossing their fingers and constantly refreshing their dashboards to see if sales are being made. And then when the launch doesn't perform, they blame their audience size, they blame the algorithms and decide that they just need to post more, or that the offer wasn't priced properly, or that people just don't want what you have. And it's almost never that. The problem is the upstream of the launch. What is everything you did before you opened the doors to the cart? People assume that the problems happen once you've already opened the launch, but actually the problems typically are happening long before. It's whether or not you created demand for the offer you're selling. Demand isn't something that you can simply ask for at the end. Instead, you have to build it over time, and that's exactly what I'm going to share with you. So all that's to say, I did not just open an offer and at Power Table Live and say, I hope this goes well. Hopefully people buy. but rather I started with a number. My number was originally going to be 50K. And then I was like, I think we can do more than that. And what if we set the goal at 100K? So I started to work backwards from that number, 100K. How many sales would I need? What is the right price point for the offer at with that goal in mind? How many people in the room? What is the conversion rate I'm going to aim for this launch? And what would I have to be doing in the months leading up to it in order to make that happen? And that one move, starting with the end goal of the number of people that I wanted, the sales amount I wanted, the conversion rate that I wanted, and then walking it backwards is what turns a launch from a wish into a plan. And next, I want to share with you, let's talk numbers. Okay. Let's talk about the real numbers because I want to be super transparent. I mean, a lot of people in this space, they'll say, I had a $10,000 day. I can teach you to have $5,000 days, $10,000 weeks, $100,000 months. But they are either not breaking those numbers down for you, or they're quietly manipulating you by not showing you the whole picture of the numbers. So here's my whole picture. That one day, Power Table Live, I launched live in person to a room, although nothing about this launch has to do with in person in the room. You can do this entirely online. You could do it entirely in a different setting if you've created demand. More on that later. But I launched live at my conference, Power Table Live. That one day brought in $114,264. Here's what that broke down. I sold 3 offers. Our leaders program, which is our high ticket visibility and speaking program, that brought in 102,000. Then we had some people join our mastermind. So that brought in another $7,128. And then we pre-sold 2027 conference tickets, which brought in that day another $5,136. So that was one day. But we actually had the campaign open a little bit longer, particularly for the conference tickets. So we knew that some people would want to buy, they just weren't going to buy right there on site. So if you wanted to consider the full campaign of the launch as opposed to just one day, it actually brought in $139,707 because we then sold more conference tickets, a little over another $30,000 in pre-sale conference tickets across that window. And now I'm going to say something that most people won't tell you, and it's really, really important, and I want you to hear it clearly. $139,000 is what I made in sales generated. It is not the same as cash collected. I would love to tell you that at this particular launch, I walked away with $139,000 in cash in my bank account, but that is not what happened. The actual cash collected from the launch was $49,675. The rest is structured into payment plans that will be paid out over time. And I'm telling you that on purpose because whether you do a lot of payment plans with your business or not, I do. I'm a big fan of them. I like the ongoing recurring revenue. I also like to give my audience that flexibility. It feels good to me. Only do it if it feels good to you. But I'm telling you the difference between sales in a launch versus cash generated, because when you see people online posting really big numbers and they're saying I had $1 million launch, it's important for you to consider. It doesn't mean you need to go ask them. It doesn't mean that they're good or bad. Like there's no value judgment here, but it's important for you to understand whether that was revenue generated, total sales, or cash in the bank, because they're very different things. And the difference is where a lot of online marketing becomes dishonest because they're saying I had a $100,000 launch, but they might have actually only generated $10,000 in cash. Neither one is bad, but if they're manipulating you into believing they had a $100,000 cash month, that's not the same thing. And I would rather trust you with my numbers and let you see what it is that I'm doing than be impressed by them and just say, I had a 6-figure day, I had a 6-figure launch. That's good. But I also want you to know that it's very normal in business, especially in coaching and events and things like that, for your sales generated and your cash collected to be 2 very different numbers. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to be transparent about it. And I also thought it would be very helpful for you to understand, not many people will talk about this, but like what were the offers and the pricing? So Leaders, it's a $5,000 program. Regularly, it's $7,500, but we sold it at the conference with a special in-room price of $5,000. We also had a VIP offer at $8,500. So some of our people did upgrade to VIP, so some of those came in a bit higher. The mastermind is $297 a month. And then the conference tickets range anywhere from $300 to $650 because they were on a 50% off pre-sale. So three very different offers at three very different price points. And I will tell you, I've never actually sold three offers at one time before, especially live during a launch. So I didn't know what was going to happen, but I sold each one with a very different strategy. And that's the part that really matters. So let's go ahead and dive into the strategy component a little bit more. So the strategy, what made it actually work? The answer is market research and 12 months of it. I know you're probably thinking, did you just say 12 months? That's crazy. But the long game is the whole game, right? I started working on the earlier round of the Leaders Program a year before this public launch, roughly 12 months ahead of this $100,000 plus day. I did loads of market research calls. I generated feedback from the people in the earlier versions of the program. I collected testimonials from my mastermind members and past conference attendees and one-on-one clients. And I sprinkled those all throughout my content during the launch, but also leading up to the launch, so that by the time I stood up to sell leaders, I wasn't guessing what my people wanted. There was no guessing in my launch and what I was selling. I had spent a year listening to people. I knew exactly what they wanted. And I mentioned a couple minutes ago that I sold three different offers. And if I'm being honest, I actually wasn't sure I was going to do this until literally right before the conference. Like I flip-flop back and forth on this part of the decision of like, do I sell all three at the event? And I ultimately decided to do so and have three deliberately different plays for each of them. So leaders got the full treatment. So this is what I would say is the most traditional part of the launch: a special in-room price, special bonus, champagne toast. This is the offer I really wanted people to say yes to while they were in the room. It's not something I offer year round as well, so I knew it would feel a bit exclusive because it's not something people can join all the time. The mastermind, on the other hand, got the completely opposite treatment on purpose. So there was no urgencies, no discounts. I didn't give a big stage presentation. It was full price. I barely mentioned it on stage. In fact, I just positioned it as an alternative path for people who weren't ready for leaders, but they were ready for a next step. They were ready for support or maybe visibility. The stages and speaking and visibility component we focus on leaders wasn't their priority. Instead, they wanted more of a peer-to-peer mastermind. They wanted more offer support. They're going through transition with their agency or their business or scaling. And so they just wanted an alternative to visibility. So it was really, I wasn't asking them to choose between two offers because there were two very different people in different stages in their current business growth. And then the conference presale got a different strategy entirely. I decided that when I was going to pre-sell conference tickets, I was going to make it stupid to ignore. Like it would be a crazy decision not to take me up on this pre-sale. That's what I tried to position it as. So I went 50 off with our conference pre-sale. And I kind of wanted to think of it as like, you're already here. You've seen the social proof. You've seen the results. You've seen the connections. Like, why wouldn't you be back next year? And I'm going to make it at such a price that it would be literally insane to ignore. That 50% off is also not something you would typically see at another event. So it really had that exclusivity feature. It had a limited time on it. And I just wanted it to be an obvious and easy yes for people. And it worked. We sold quite a few of them. And again, completely different positioning to my audience than the other two offers. And I am a firm believer in not giving people too many options. The last thing I want to do is lose a person that I could really, really help because they were overwhelmed by decision fatigue. Overwhelm truly kills buying decisions. So that is why when I say I wasn't sure if I was going to sell all three, I genuinely did not know what I was going to do, whether I'd even mention the mastermind at Power Table. So let me tell you actually how I ended up solving that problem in my strategy. This year was the first time I'd ever worked with a sales strategist, also someone who is an active closer in the room for me. So Whitney Robinson, she's been on the podcast twice now. If you were at Power Table Live, you got to meet her. She's an absolutely incredible event experience strategist. She works on making sure your attendees have the best high quality event experience possible, but also she works on helping you with closing sales in the room and really making sure that your offer is a phenomenal next step for the people who are coming and that they are supported with the next step by choosing to join that offer with you. So, with her help, instead of throwing every option at everyone, we really tailored that next step to that exact person. The person who wanted leaders was going to be a different person in the room than the person who wanted the mastermind, and so on. And then in that regard, there was no more over because we weren't asking them to make different choices. And then we also built funnels on the back end with our email marketing that then funneled those people into two completely different post event marketing campaigns. This customization based on individual journeys actually turned out to be, I think, one of the biggest advantages for our launch that was so successful. And now I'm going to share with you what I think is the biggest strategy of all. And that was learning to increase my own capacity. I thought for a really long time how I would present this because I didn't want it to sound so woo and fluffy and out in the ether and mystical. You guys know I'm not a mystical girl, but I really truly believe that the reason that I more than doubled my launch sales from last year was because I had grown so much that I could hold a larger capacity. I held much higher standards. I sold differently in the room because of the growth that I had. I held myself to a higher standard all year long, not just the day of the event, not just the week of the event. I pushed myself to have bigger goals, bigger dreams. I stretched myself in terms of what I thought I could do. I held myself to higher standards in my habits, my routines, what I did every day, and my beliefs about what was possible. When I raised my own threshold for success and I didn't let myself play small, that's when things change. So I want to give you some very practical examples of what that looks like. So I stayed really dialed in to my own peer masterminds that I'm in and my mentors all year long. I constantly am learning from them, getting feedback, putting my stuff in front of them, saying, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, in this situation, what have you done in the past? And I think a lot of people, when they're busy, especially when they're prepping for their own launch, they're so quick to drop the feedback loop from their mentors, their peers, their masterminds that they're in. And then they go into their launch totally isolated, or they're only tapping in after there's a crisis. And instead, I'm sure that everyone that I am, learning from, learning with, my mentors, like I probably made them sick of me. I treated it as a constant feedback loop leading up to this event to hold me accountable, to get feedback on my ideas, my pitches, my workshops, my offers, all of it. So if you're in a mastermind right now or you have a coach, that is my encouragement to you is treat them as a feedback loop. Get more out of the containers that you're in, but you can only do that if you're the one actively making the most of it. And if you don't have one, join our mastermind. The link's in the show notes. We will put you into that kind of expansion and threshold to success. And then the other strategy I use is I really protected my emotional capacity. I was in my porcelain doll era. That's what one of our mastermind members called it. I protected my state of being like it was my job, like it was part of the strategy, because it was. So I did breath work, visualization, walking in silence every single day, not consuming very much content, practicing my talks. I practiced my keynotes and my workshops, which were my sales pitch for my launch, dozens upon dozens of times. I kept myself in good physical health. I did not drop my exercise routines. I ate super healthy. I took breaks. I socialized with people. As busy as I was, and it truly has been the busiest year of my life was leading up to this launch, I made all of those things a non-negotiable because I knew they were critical to my success. And I kept myself in this little bubble where I would not let myself, get way off track on my physical health or food or diet. I did not let myself watch a lot of movies or consume a lot of content. Like I kept myself in this delicate porcelain doll bubble because it was so important for me to stay focused and stay in that mindset and stay in that kind of like space of emotional regulation. I also delegated a lot more out in the months leading up to the launch. This cost me a good chunk of money, but I hired things out and it created more space then for me to do all those things I just said, go on the walks, practice the talks, talk to my community members, like be fully dialed in on the offer and the pitch and do everything that I needed to do leading up to the launch. That trade-off of cutting into profits so that I could hire out things like event planning, sales copy, other admin related tasks was worth every single penny because it gave me the space I needed to show up as the best version of myself. If you're not there yet and you're like, Taylor, I can't hire all those things out, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I certainly wasn't in the earlier stages of my business, but I would recommend the more you're growing, that you should be working actively towards that goal, delegating a lot of those things so you can create the space for you to be the best version of you that you need to be for that launch. So, what are the lessons that you can take away from this episode about my first 6-figure day, $139,000 launch? And what does it mean for you and your business? Well, let's get into a few lessons. So, the first one is that you should be selling the exciting future, not the fatigue. Right now, online, I think a lot of people are talking about how tired everyone is. I see this all the time from business coaches and leaders, community leaders, event hosts on threads and Instagram. They're like, consumers are tired. People are tired of decision fatigue. That's why my sales are slow. The economy is bad. And nobody wants to make decisions because they're all so overwhelmed and exhausted. And that is true. I'm not going to sugarcoat the reality of the world we live in right now. However, you will automatically stand out in the world online if you offer a different viewpoint. Instead of trying to convince exhausted people to push through anyway, or not selling to them because they're exhausted and just accepting the dismal current reality, instead speak to the people who want something different, who want a more positive outlook, who want a strategy and a path forward, and who are genuinely excited about the future, the people who have hope, the people who want change, the people who are willing to invest and take action in order to make that happen. Lead with that, lead with the future, and you become the contrast and you will stand out online. The second lesson that you can take away is the right offer, the right price, the right audience. If you're not hitting your launch goals, I can almost guarantee you that there's a disconnect in one of those three things: offer, price, audience. And you're not doing enough market research to know which of those it is. You're probably leaning too hard on AI to validate your ideas, and it's glazing it responses and being super helpful, but you're not actually talking to your real people to understand what is the amount of money they're willing to spend on your outcome. What is it that is their top priority right now, and what are their hopes and desires, and what is it that they're actually looking for? What would take them from a that sounds nice to that is absolutely what I want, and I'm excited to get started. Pricing, the bonuses, the inclusions, everything about your offer has to align for your ideal client, not based on what AI tells you sounds really good in the moment. And I want to say this doesn't require you to do a profit killing discount. You do not have to do 50% off. I told you that I had that for one of the offers, but I also told you that I sold one of my offers completely full price with no bonuses. And then I sold another one with a small bonus, but that was pretty much it. That's the only incentive that I offered with a small discount. I mean, you just need to be pricing and offering incentives and bonuses or urgency in a way that is exactly what they're looking for, what feels really exciting and hopeful to the person that you want to buy your offer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to cut all of your profit in the process. And it also requires meeting the people that you have in your audience right now. This is also another reason I see for failed launches. Maybe it's the right offer and the right price, but you don't have the right audience. And in that scenario, you have two choices. You can wait and not sell and not make any money and wait until you have those people in your audience, or you can launch with the right offer for the right people you already have. Not the one you wish you had in the future, not the one that somebody else has, but the audience that you actually have. So if you have had launch disconnect, I would really think about who actually is in your audience. What can you sell them right now versus what you think you should be selling in the future? The third lesson is if you really want a high cash launch, if you really, really want those big numbers, you might want to incentivize or discount heavily. Now, you don't have to. And I just said, I sold some offers with a discount, some full price. You don't have to do this every time. This is not a hard and fast rule, but I will say that if you do want a heavy cash infusion, if you want that high cash month, ask yourself, what would make this offer stupid to ignore? What would make this so good to my ideal client? There is no way, they will pass it up. That's what I did with my conference ticket presale. And it doesn't necessarily have to be price, although that's the easiest thing that you can do is discount the price. There are reasons for that and reasons you shouldn't do that. But it could also be a VIP tier that you wouldn't typically offer to anyone. Maybe it's a bonus. Maybe it's one-on-one time with you. I've actually had very good success selling group programs with a one-to-one call with me as the exclusive bonus. I don't really like doing that for me personally, but I've had a lot of success with it in the past. And if you enjoy that one-to-one component, like do that. Think about what the bonuses or incentives would be that your exact audience would say, like, take my credit card right now. If you want a high cash month, you've really got to get those injections, those incentives on point for the audience. Make it stupid for them to ignore and you will have an insanely good launch. And then the final lesson here is that you probably need a much longer runway than you think you do or that you're currently doing. In the world we are living in right now, people are overstimulated, right? We see on average over 100,000 pieces of information every single day. That's truly insane, right? I mean, no one's going to remember all that, which is exactly my point, is that people need a lot more touch points and a lot more time than you're typically giving them. 2 weeks to launch an offer with 5 carousels and you talk about it on your stories for a week is probably not enough to get them to that launch. So really thinking about you need dozens, if not hundreds of touch points built up over time to get people to trust you in order to buy. The launch doesn't create the demand. That's the most important takeaway here. You have to create the demand long before you ever open cart, long before the launch ever happens. Demand, the launch is just what collects the demand after you've already built it up, after you've spent time building that runway, building relationships, building trust, showing people you're consistent, educating them, and getting them excited about the future. And if your launches keep falling flat, I can almost guarantee that it's actually that your runway is far too short. Now, you don't have to have a large event to have a very successful launch or a 6-figure launch. As I said in the earlier part of this podcast, I know plenty of people who have done this entirely online, who do it with live sales events such as masterclasses or challenges, entirely virtual. I do think there's a very large advantage to having some kind of live experience, whether it is in person or online, as opposed to just content and email marketing, which for a few years during the pandemic years, those two things alone were enough to probably have a successful launch, but they're not anymore. You do need some kind of live component. But it is very, very possible. And I hope that those lessons of like the debrief of what worked for me for a 6-figure launch right now is helpful for you in planning your own launches for the rest of this year. Looking back on all of that, I really hope that what you take away too is that none of this was about having the perfect content or the exact sales page copy or, having the everything perfect 100% of the time, but rather it was about I started with an end goal. I reverse engineered that. I made a plan and I gave myself a lot of time and a lot of touch points. And I validated it over and over again through market research with my audience, creating content on the same topics as my offer, talking to people, relying on my mentors, relying on the people I'm in masterminds with, and getting feedback. And then also raising my own standards and being fully dialed in and focused on that goal and showing up as the best version of me in order to lead that kind of transformation. And that's good news for you. What this means is you're not waiting for the viral post in order to have the successful launch. You're not waiting for the 100,000 followers. I don't have 100,000 followers. I have 20,000 followers. I've also seen people with 5,000 followers have a 6-figure launch. It's not about the audience. It's not about that one perfect piece of content. It's about having a great launch where you hit your exact launch goals because you had the right plan, the right offer, the right price, the right people in place to sell it to. And a plan is something that you can start building today. That is a repeatable system. It's not a hope and post and good vibes. And it's not a one-time miracle. It's something that you can build, refine, and test over time. And here's why I'm telling you all of this information right now. Like, besides the fact that I really enjoyed sharing this debrief, I'm very proud of the launch. I think it's really cool to be able to educate too on what's working right now. How did I have that 6-figure launch? But more than that, I wanted to share that in August, we are hosting our virtual conference, Standout and Sellout, August 11th to 13th. It is free. So day one is Standout, day two is Sellout, is about turning visibility into demand and converting it into sales and building offers that people cannot walk away from. They're excited to buy, and you're launching in a way that actually converts. And all day long, it will be an entirely live day of feedback, coaching, audits on your sales page, audits on your email marketing, audits on your content to help you get to that point where you will have an in demand offer that people actually want. Unlike other virtual summits and events, none of this is pre recorded. It's not a whole bunch of slide decks. We're doing everything live and giving you that in real time experience that's going to help you move forward in your business. I would love for you to join us at Standout and Sellout. Registration opens in just a few days. So if this podcast episode lit something up for you, if you have questions about launching, if you have questions about your offers, you're excited to learn more, grab your ticket to Standout and Sellout. And I'll tell you here on this podcast the second the doors are open. And in the meantime, I would love for you to subscribe to the show if you haven't already so that you don't miss a single episode. And go connect with us on our website, thepowertable.co, or on social media at the same, thepowertable.co. Have a great day, my friends, and I will talk to you soon.